3rd and 4th grade. Hope you had a great spring break and a wonderful Easter. Today I want to go through the next couple sections that you will be reading in science this week. So we're going to start off with Chapter 5, Matter, which talks about water, air, and weather. And we're doing Part 1, so 5.1 for today, God's gift of water. So let's read together. What is the oldest thing in your house? Is it books? Is it pictures? Is it furniture? No, there is something older than any of these. It is water. Water is as old as anything in the world. The second verse in the Bible, Genesis 1:2 says, "And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters." So water has been around longer than any of us can really imagine. Water everywhere. How much water is there in the world? Look at a globe or world map. Will show you that 3/4 of the earth is covered by oceans, lakes, and rivers. So if we look at this map here, we can see that pretty clearly that the majority of it is water. You can see all the different oceans in here. Now there's a good chunks of land on the earth, but the majority of it is covered by water. If all the ice in the world melted, there would be enough water to raise the level of the oceans about 300 feet. And we talked about the Arctic Ocean up here at the top of the world. That is basically all ice. So if all of that ice melted and the ice that's down here by Antarctica melted, the level of the oceans would raise about 300 feet. What would happen if all the land in the continents were pushed into the oceans? So if I took the land and I just pushed it down, it would disappear. There is enough water in the oceans to cover all the land on Earth more than a mile deep, if the land were all the same level and the valleys of the ocean were filled. So the oceans, they're very, very deep, and we don't always see that when we go to visit the ocean because we cannot fathom just how deep it is out in its deepest sections. Water is found not only in oceans, lakes, and rivers, but also in the soil. Have you ever felt the water in the moist soil of a garden? Water also flows in underground rivers and lakes. You could dig a hole anywhere on Earth, and sooner or later you would find water if you dug deep enough. And that's why people are able to go different places and dig wells. Sometimes they have to dig for a much longer time than others, but eventually they do reach water. Large amounts of water are also found in the air. Scientists say that on a pleasant summer day, there are about 50,000 tons of water vapor in the air above a square mile of land. Some of this water is given off by plants, which release it into the air through the thousands of pores in each of their leaves. Plants with broad leaves give off the most water. So if you think about it, plants like pine needles, they're not going to give off a whole lot of water from those leaves. But if you think of some of your other trees like oak or maple, they've got bigger leaves. Those leaves are going to give off even more water than like your pine needle leaves. And then if you think about some of your bigger plants like ferns and how big their leaves are, they're giving off quite a bit of water as well. From the time it is planted until it is harvested, a crop of corn can give off enough water to cover its field 11 inches deep. That's almost a foot. People and animals also release water into the air. Every day, each man, woman, and child throws out from the skin as perspiration or sweat, and from the lungs as moisture in the air breathed out, an average of nearly 1 quart of water. And that's every day, and approximately 1 quart, because different people have different amounts of water, but it's approximately 1 quart for each person each day. The Bible tells us that when God created the world, he divided the waters with the firmament, which is the layer of air surrounding the earth. God gathered the waters below the firmament together to make the seas. The rest of the water was above the firmament. God says that during the flood, the windows of heaven were opened. That's in Genesis 7:11. At this time of great turmoil, the waters above the firmament were poured out upon the earth. And those waters that are above the firmament are found in clouds, which is what we're going to read about next. When you look up into the sky, perhaps the first thing you notice is whether or not there are clouds. Clouds are made mostly of water and air. Although most clouds look fluffy and light, a single cloud may contain from 100 to 1,000 tons of water. That is a lot of water. How high up are the clouds? That's a very good question. Each kind of cloud has its own range of height. The height of the clouds also depends upon the condition of the atmosphere, the layer of air surrounding the Earth. The more humid the air is, or the more moisture that's in the air, the lower the clouds will be. When a cloud is so low that it is at ground level, we call it fog. Clouds which are high in the sky are made of tiny ice crystals. Clouds which are low are made up of very tiny droplets of water. Each of these droplets is so small that it would take about 1 million of them to make a raindrop. Clouds are always changing shape because whenever warm air touches a cloud, some of the cloud evaporates. Clouds have been divided into 3 main groups depending upon their shape. You should learn to recognize these shapes. Later, you will learn how they are combined to form other kinds of clouds. So let's take a look at these 3 types of clouds. The first type of cloud is the cirrus. The word cirrus means curly. Cirrus clouds are thin and feather-like. You can see that here in this first picture. Because they are very high in the sky, they are made entirely of ice crystals and air. Cirrus clouds look hazy and delicate. Usually they appear in dry weather, but they often mean that a storm is on its way. So I have a cotton ball here, and if I were to kind of pull it apart into kind of this thin wispies, that's kind of the idea of cirrus clouds. It's very thin, very wispy, not a whole lot to them. We often see them up in the sky. They're high up there in the sky, and we see them on nice, warm days. And as the book said, though, sometimes they mean that we have a storm coming. The next type of cloud is the cumulus cloud. Cumulus clouds are the large puffy clouds that you often see on hot summer afternoons. They have flat bottoms and high domed tops like heads of cauliflower. Usually cumulus clouds are bright white and appear during fair weather, but sometimes they become thick, heavy, and dark. Then they are called thunderheads because of the heavy rain, thunder, and lightning they bring. So if I bring out my cotton balls again, it'd be like if I took a couple of these cotton balls and stretched them out a little bit, but not so much that they're wispy, kind of giving them a little bit of a flat bottom. So they're these thick, puffy ones. These are usually the ones that we look at and find the shapes in if you've ever gone outside on a day when you can see lots of clouds and try to look for shapes. This is what we're thinking of for our cumulus clouds. The third main category of clouds is the stratus. Stratus clouds are thick layers of clouds that look like a blanket. They are flat and often gray, and they frequently bring drizzling rain or fine snow. And these are fairly low clouds. So going back to my cotton balls, it's like I took my cotton ball and I stretched it out kind of thin, so similar to the cumulus, but not nearly as puffy. So I get them kind of out here. They're more like a blanket, so they're stretched out. They're not as stretched out as our cirrus clouds up here, but they're also not as puffy as our cumulus. They're kind of in the middle. They're flat, kind of look like a blanket. These are the kind of clouds that are often there on your rainy days or your snowy days. They just don't look so great. Our final group of clouds is fog. And this fog is actually not its own separate group. It's part of the stratus because it's a stratus cloud, one of these, that's so very close down to the Earth's surface, we call it fog. And often people aren't able to see very far through fog if it's very thick on a day. So those are our 3 types of clouds. We've got our cirrus. Those are our feather-like ones, very thin, very wispy. Our cumulus, these are your puffy ones that you can see a lot of shapes in them. And then you've got your stratus. And these ones are flat, gray. They look like not a whole lot. They're usually ones that are kind of on the yucky weather days. And they're bringing that drizzling rain or fine snow. And if these stratus clouds get too close down to the Earth, they become what we call fog.